Welcome. This meeting is being recorded. Should have all just gotten that notice. Welcome. This is the Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund Grant Committee meeting. And as we do every meeting, we're going to start with an opening inspiration. And our committee member, Shanice, has offered to provide that today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Shanice.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'd like to share an excerpt from something called the Kambahi River Collective. I feel more grounding and inspiration. I think the experiences that folks might be navigating are especially Black, Indigenous, and other folks of color. Currently, I think there's some space to navigate how both racism and coronavirus are impacting lives with our loved ones and parents, grandparents, children, siblings at an egregious rate. And I think to fully process all of this, there's a lot of layers to unravel from 1619 right up until now. And I think centuries of racist policies and structures have created the communities that we live in and the air that we breathe, where we're even permitted to breathe, the water we drink, food we eat, education, healthcare we do or don't get. I think all that harm from generation to generation passes on to the psyche, especially at this molecular level. For Black people, it's something that also really impacts that has these extra layers of impacts with the climate crisis. And so I'm going to just read this part 2 of the Kambahi River Collective Statement. It's from a collective of Black feminists who began meeting in 1974 to kind of clarify their politics amongst another uprising. And I believe it's relevant because, the ways in which politics and pervasiveness of racism manifests is sometimes, as I reflect, does not allow for a specific space for Black women to look deeply into our own experiences and sharing and growing consciousness. I builds that politic that really will change our lives inevitably, and in this way of thinking about racial oppression and what that looks like in our work. So here it goes. It's titled What We Believe. Above all else, our politics initially sprang from the shared belief that Black women are inherently valuable, that our liberation is a necessity, not as an adjunct to somebody else's may, because of our need as some human persons for autonomy. This may seem obvious as to sound simplistic, but it is apparent that no other ostensibly progressive movement has ever considered our specific oppression as a priority or worked seriously for ending that oppression, and merely naming that these stereotypes like Mammy. I think we heard conversation about Aunt Jemima today, leaving, and Sapphire, Bull Dagger, and I'll end it there. But I think let alone cataloging that cruel, murderous depictions almost, I think really indicates how little our value has been placed upon 4 centuries of bondage. And we realize that only people who care enough about us to work consistently for our liberation are us. And our politics evolve from a healthy love for ourselves, our sisters, and our community, which allows us to continue and struggle and work. That's, well, I'll end the excerpt. PCEF is playing a critical role in redistributing access and healthy livable environments for Black and Indigenous folks and people of color and the communities that we live and thrive in. And just knowing our differences and our diversity, our nuances, and these lived experiences during this time, I think really strengthens our capacity to do our work.
Thank you, Shanice. So I'm going to start by just going over some quick public participation, virtual participation guidelines. Committee meetings are open to the public. Obviously, this slide is a little bit wrong. The public comment tonight is actually going to start at 6:15. We're just going to have a little staff update before that. Video, we ask that folks who are not committee members or staff turn their videos off, and the raise hand function and chat functions are also for committee members and staff, with the exception of introductions and signing up for public comment. So I would encourage you, anyone who wants to give public comment, to put their name and indicate that desire in the chat box before 6:15, so that we can kind of make a queue. We did allow a little bit more time on tonight's agenda for public comment, just recognizing that we have we put a big document and a lot of material out for public comment, and that there might be some folks who are interested in, speaking directly to the committee and providing feedback that way. So if we don't get that much public comment, if we don't get sort of 20 minutes worth, which is the amount of time that's allotted on the agenda, then we'll just kind of bump everything else up on the agenda. I think that is the only other kind of processy thing, is that there is closed captioning available on this in this meeting, and you can find that by going to your menu bar and looking for the 3 dots that say more under them, and then there's a drop down menu, and you can view the full transcript of the live captioning that's happening for this meeting. Okay, so with that, I would like to start with introductions. If members of the public can put their name, affiliation, and any other information that you want to share into the comment box, we'll have staff read that out, but I'm going to start first with committee members. Robin?
Hi, Robin Wang, he, him, committee member.
Michael?
Michael Edenhill, he, him, committee member.
Jeffrey?
Jeffrey Moreland, he, him, committee member.
Shanice?
Shanice Clark, she, her, they, them, committee member.
Maria?
Maria Sippin, she, they, committee member.
Renfis?
Rainfeast Gentino Viatoro, he, him, committee member.
Faith?
Faith Graham, hello you all. I've missed you these last couple of weeks. She, her, committee member.
Andrea? Oh, you're muted, Andrea. I'll do Andrea's introduction for her. That's Andrea Hamburg, committee member. She uses she, her pronouns. And hopefully we can get the microphone situation figured out. So we'll move to staff now. I'm Katie Lister, she, her, PCEF startup team. James?
Hi, everybody. Good to see you again. James Valdez, he, him pronouns, PCEF startup team.
Janet? Oh, you're muted, Janet.
Good. Good evening. Janet Hammer, she, her, PCEF startup team.
Sam?
Sam Brasso, he, him, PCEF startup team.
Okay, looks like Andrea is coming back in, but I'm not going to forget the minutes tonight. So I want to get that out of the way now and ask if folks have any changes or comments, questions, or edits to the minutes from the May 28th meeting. Okay, seeing no changes, I think that we will call those approved, and then I'd like to turn it over to Sam Brasso, who is going to provide a little bit of an update on our public comment period before opening it up for comments from the public.
And real quick, just to keep in practice, I'm going to go ahead and read everyone out that's in the meeting too, if that works.
Oh, yep, sorry.
No, all good, all good. So we've got Anissa Pemberton with us, they, them, with the Coalition of Communities of Color. We've got Angela Providelli, she, her, with BPS staff. We've got Angela Crowley Cook with Oregon Solar Energy Industries Association, she, her. We've got Lynn Lindgren Schroeder with Housing Development Center. We've got Jose, I'm sorry if I mispronounce this into anyone, Mikolaskas, he, him with Verde. We've got Scott Sander, Exceed Enterprises, he, him. We've got David Radke, he, him with IBW Local 48 Business Rep. We've got Dirk Larson, he, him with Zero Coalition. We've got James Meteor, he, him with Home Performance Guild of Oregon. And we've got Deidre Schutz, Nutrition Garden RX, she, her, as well as we've got one of our presenters as well that I know. I'll call out Chris Grube with us this evening as well.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll just jump into a staff update around the public comment. And I'll just start with, and this is, we'll do this just for folks on the line. We're going to do this first, and then we'll go to the public comment. But early on, as soon as we turned around with the public comment, we did receive feedback from several organizations suggesting they needed more time. So that was one of the first things, and I'll dig into a little bit of the work that we did and around that, but we did make the decision to extend the public comment period by a week in order to accommodate just in order to accommodate the public feedback and acknowledge the time that we're in and recognize that it's important for us to get that feedback. So we extended feedback, the deadline for public comment from June 19th out to June 26th. And it's fortunate because that's given us more time to do our one-on-one outreach, which I'll talk about here shortly. I want to acknowledge that, we came out of a committee meeting the week before we pushed out our public comment, and I mean it was long nights, long evenings to get the public comment out. But in doing that, we ultimately dropped a pretty large document out for public comment, and we received, and I acknowledge that it took several folks back, and I think that was certainly some of the comment around needing more time was reflecting that we put a large volume of information out. And so what we did in response to that was we developed a guide to reviewing the grant scoring criteria that was pushed out about almost a week after the public comment documents were released. And so since that time, and frankly, since just connecting with people early on before we pushed out that guide, I want to acknowledge that once I digested it, seems, folks and folks acknowledged that they could see that it was taken in pieces, that it was more digestible. There was generally a sigh of relief. But I just want to acknowledge that was the initial impact of putting that out there, and that's something we're certainly reflecting on as we get out to the RFP period and how to plan that better. We've hosted 2 webinars so far that have been PCEF staff hosted webinars with about over 40 participants in each of the 2 webinars, and we've added another webinar here to take place next Tuesday morning. We've co-hosted 1 webinar. And so in addition, so with the 2 webinars as well as the 1 co-hosted webinar, we have had about over 100 folks in participation as part of our webinars, where we've walked them through the entirety of the criteria, asked clarifying questions, and then opened it up for comments. Staff have had several one-on-one meetings and correspondence with over 10 organizations so far, and are prioritizing the remaining time that we have to getting to our public comment, the remaining of our work time in getting feedback from from particularly Black and Indigenous organizations. That has been our focus, but as this remaining time winds down to the 26th, that is a lot of where our work focus has been, is just making sure that we're reaching out and being able to pull folks in and make sure we're able to answer any questions that they have. And so with that largely provides sort of a lot of the work that have been done during the public comment period. And there's been countless other back and forth, certain staff reflections on concepts and discussions that we will bring to you all after the public comment period closes. But as part of that, one of the discussions we wanted to open up here today briefly is just to suggest that we have a listening session next week for your committee meeting. So instead of a committee meeting, it would really be another comment opportunity for the public, but instead this comment opportunity would be directly in front of you all. We would be, we'd clarify and be very clear that this comment opportunity is no different, no less than any of the other comment opportunities. We as staff would be in that listening session taking notes and compiling that and summarizing that feedback along with all the other feedback, all the other comment and feedback we've gotten in the public comment period. So holding it all equal, but we acknowledge and recognize that for many folks, being able to provide their feedback directly to you all as committee members is valuable and see that as a means to connecting with you all. So that's something that we did want to pose with you all tonight. And see if you all have initial thoughts on that we would repurpose next week's committee meeting for a listening session on during this public comment period. And so I think with that, that's what I wanted to open up with that, and I'll stop there.
So I guess I would just add that we were thinking that a listening session would probably be about an hour long, although it would be nice to be able to kind of reserve our time in case there are, many people interested in participating. Certainly as staff, we could go longer, and kind of would ask that the committee members be available to tentatively go longer. And then we also just wanted to make sure that we checked in with you all to just be sure that there weren't any other kind of things in your mind that you had hoped we might be able to address in a committee meeting that we should have on the agenda for next meeting for next week as well. Faith?
I would just ask that if we can prioritize at the top of that listening session, those that haven't been able to give comments in other forums. So I'm sure you're thinking about that, but just so that we make sure we get the breadth of feedback.
Yeah. Robin?
Yeah, just two things. I think it would be helpful again next week if you also provided just a revised timeline on kind of the next few months, just kind of put everything in context. And if there's any updates on the recruitment process for the other board members.
Okay, great. Yeah, and neither of those things should take take a ton of time. Any other comments? Megan?
Hi. Just curious if you'll be able to provide, maybe not at the next meeting, but like the success you've had in hearing from different organizations, and particularly wondering about Black and Indigenous organizations. And then if we could have that information close to the time we're hearing the listening session, to me that would be useful, but I also know it won't be closed, right? Is that right? The public comment period. So I guess maybe those timelines don't quite line up, but it might be helpful to understand kind of that.
We can certainly provide you with kind of like a summary level update of who we have been hearing from.
That would be, I think, really useful.
Okay. Okay.
And one piece of information I should have added is that as part of pushing out the public comment period, so I appreciate your comment, Robin, about just an update on the timeline and where things stand. As part of pushing out and extending the public comment period by a week, we did extend or push out the release of the RFP from August 3rd to August 10th. And that was just, everything is in such tight margins right now with the work time that was a critical piece. And so that was one of the conversation pieces we had with folks asking about extending the public comment period in. And saw that as critical. Maybe if I've still got the floor, then one other comment I will throw out. It's unrelated to the public comment period, but just earlier today, City Council did approve of the application support resources and was really just complimentary of the committee and the work happening here. So that was the first win. It was in a very busy council agenda at the very end, but they managed to at least share those comments and get that across. So congratulations on getting through that first set of funding, and it'll be even more congratulations as we get those resources out. So staff will be working on turning that up, and you should see that coming up in the next few weeks.
Thanks, Sam. All right, we're gonna start moving the agenda along. I think that it looks like we have just a couple of people who have signed up for public comment. I would just encourage those on the list, if you haven't and you do want to, just a reminder for anybody who may have logged on late, if you're interested in public comment, just put your name and indicate your desire to provide public comment in the chat. But we have two signed up. First is Jose from Verde. So Jose, if you can unmute yourself and if possible, put your video on.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep my video off. It doesn't look like I can anyways. This computer's a little weird.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. But hi, good evening, grant committee and staff members. Hope you all are taking care of yourselves. My name is Jose Mikalaskis, and I'm the climate justice organizer at Verde. I'm here today representing the PCEF Coalition, and I want to share with you our process for reading and submitting comments from the PCEF Coalition for the draft grant scoring criteria. So we've split up the sections among our steering committee members. For example, I facilitate the work equity work group at the PCEF Coalition, and I am meeting with folks in the next week to discuss the workforce development grant criteria. All of us will then gather our comments and suggestions in a letter and submit it to you by next Friday as a coalition. We anticipate to share constructive feedback that asks for grant making that recognizes the needs of frontline BIPOC-led organizations and provide concrete examples of how the grant committee could do so. We also recognize that applying for government grants often presents many barriers, and we truly want the Portland Clean Energy Fund program to be successful in the communities that already face so many barriers. And again, just want to thank you for continuing the work in this process, even under such difficult and draining times. We appreciate you, and we are happy to be collaborating in this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. So Angela from OSEA is the other person who signed up to give public comment. Angela, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you so much, Steering Committee, for all the work you've put into this. So many hours at such a stressful time, so many thanks. I just have a couple comments. I talked to some of my members. Again, I'm Angela Crowley-Cook with the Oregon Solar Energy Industries Association. And they had some interesting comments and ideas that I wanted to share with you all. One was about the environmental benefits sections of the applications. They wondered if there could be resources available for the nonprofit applicants as well as the contractors and subcontractors for how to figure out things like their carbon footprint. I know you've talked about this before as a steering committee, so there's just some feedback from some folks out here that would be much appreciated. I think people are confused about where to start with that. And then the other thing was folks are excited to look into different subcontractors and how they procure their own equipment and materials, but again, would love some help getting started. And so I don't know if there is a resource list, something like that. Maybe the City of Portland has NWSB vendors that it could be something that nonprofits and contractors and subcontractors could look to as they work to diversify their supply chain and their own contractors and subcontractors. But thanks again, that's all I have. Appreciate all your work.
All right, thank you, Angela. All right, I think that is it. It doesn't look like anyone else has sent a message over the chat. And so with that, we will close out public comment. And I will turn it over to James Valdez, who will be starting out the presentation on bylaws.
Hey everybody, sorry, just a moment. Let me get my video started. Yeah, just wanted to provide an update on some elements that the bylaw committee has been, or the bylaw subcommittee, that should read, has been working on over the past few months. We presented a lot of the content of the draft bylaws a few meetings ago. Now it seems like a very long time ago. And one of the elements that really came out of that conversation was a recognition that we put a lot of the content of some pretty meaty and important pieces of how the committee engages with each other and holds each other accountable, that those had been put into a document that we're calling the working agreement. And so you all received yesterday a copy of a draft version of that. And so this was an opportunity to talk through some elements that the bylaw subcommittee members, Michael Hill and Andrea Hamburg, have been working on. And then also Sam will provide a more general overview of where we're at with the bylaws themselves, but we're really hoping that we can focus this on the working agreement, recognizing that it's still very much a document that is a work in process and progress that then will come to you all for further reflection. But yeah, and I'm going to need a second. If we want to switch over to the view of the actual document, we can do that, but it's going to take me just an additional moment. So I'm going to pass it on to, I believe, Michael first. And then Andrea. I'm trying to remember the order, but
Michael first.
Michael first. Okay, so go ahead, Michael. And then while you start talking, I will pull up the document so that I can scroll to the parts that you're referring to.
Okay, and
So,
I'm just going to stop share so your view is going to change so that James can
okay,
do that.
it's going to take me a moment to get that up.
So I guess I'll start out with that we've been working on the PCEF committee working agreements, and they're kind of the good parts of the bylaws. It's where all the good stuff resides. So we know that this kind of went out just yesterday, I think, or the day before yesterday. So I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it. I'm just going to go over some things really quick. The purpose of our working agreement, it's going to include guiding principles, commitment to equity and anti-racism, the commitment to community engagement, commitment to equity and governance, the committee member roles and leadership roles, committee member conduct, BPS staff roles and responsibilities, and the review and amendment process for the working agreements. The second part of it is, so we're going to start with guiding principles. And it's that the PCEF committee, we adopted our set of guiding principles, as you can see up there. And that as we look at our working agreements, they're driven by our guiding principles from start to finish. And so I'm going to skip to part 3 since we're kind of on a timeline here, and that's the commitment to equity and anti-racism. It currently says intro language here. The intro language is going to be something, maybe, I'm just going to throw this out there, it wasn't added in yet, but that we acknowledge the past and present role of colonial systems in creating inequities and doing harm to communities of color and tribal and indigenous communities in Oregon, leading to historical and ongoing trauma. PCEF has a role in dismantling inequitable systems, and it's crucial to address systemic inequities experienced in our communities. We're currently continuing to develop this, and we're working on it. So we don't have our full commitment to equity and anti-racism done yet. If you can scroll down a little bit more for me, James. I lost my, I kind of lost mine here.
And while you're thinking, Michael, I will acknowledge that because we ended the public comment period about 10 minutes earlier, we do have more time than what we originally budgeted. So don't feel rushed on time. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. I mean,
perfect.
Yeah, we've got more time.
Sounds good. So we did the part 4 is the commitment to community engagement. I wrote this and then brought it in. I've got to give, I grabbed this information. It was a learning process for me, to say the least. I've never written a commitment to community engagement. It's been a while since I've done stuff like this, and I've been learning a lot of new language along the way. So I've got to say that I got some of this from the Haas Foundation, the Haas School. I got some from the University of Oregon. I got some of the language from Oregon Health Authority. And I got a lot of help from Malika in writing, in getting some of the language. So we'll start with reciprocity and partnership. And I'm just going to sort of read through this, since I'm not sure everybody has gotten to read through this. It's not terribly long. PCEF develops and cultivates collaborative relationships with community partners. These relationships are bi-directional exchange of knowledge and resources. PCEF honors the community partners' expertise and experience and involve community partners in design, facilitation, and evaluation of PCEF governing systems and grant-making processes to the fullest extent possible to ensure the value and relevance of the work in the community. I think that we have been doing a really good job at that so far, and I think that we can improve on it still. Clarifying expectations and commitments. We develop goals and outcomes based on the needs identified by our community partners. The PCEF committee is accountable to and will honor commitments we make to our community partners. In action, every decision we make and action we take is with an eye to the needs of the impacted communities. Decisions include program, community, and identity-based education. Community partners are provided opportunities to share content, education, and contribute to the decision-making process. I also think we've been doing a really good job with that. I've been learning a lot from our community partners, from people in the community that have come to testify at our meetings. The next one is participation. We don't know that this is not necessarily finalized in the yellow highlight, but limiting committee members to 4-year terms so that more members of impacted communities can participate as PCEF committee members. Recruitment of new committee members will be intentional with a focus on representation from the communities that we are accountable to. Safety and well-being. We anticipate and take steps to ensure the physical and emotional well-being and safety of all community participants. We will only meet in places that are accessible to people of all abilities and based in the community. In choosing locations, we will consider transportation access, spaces that are welcoming to families, and we are open to ongoing dialogue about how we can be more inclusive in our meetings. Reflection and evaluation. Intentionally incorporate opportunities for reflection, involving community partners whenever possible. Gather feedback from community partners and community members to assess the impact and inform future decision processes and grants. Transparency with the community, including reasons for why decisions were made. Humility. It allows us to listen generously, remain curious, keep an open mind, and maintain a learning attitude. It calls us to be mindful of the needs, assets, interests, and expectations of others. It requires mindfulness of our individual and institutional privileges, the complicated power dynamics that extend beyond interpersonal relationships, and the need to center the voices and experiences of individuals and communities that have been historically marginalized. Accountability. As a committee, we must hold ourselves responsible for our actions and our commitments. Accountability sustains trust and respect among individuals working towards shared goals. We hold ourselves accountable when we fulfill our roles and responsibilities to the best of our abilities, and we acknowledge the impact of our actions, inaction, and limitations have on others. Accountability allows us to accept our shortcomings and commit to redressing our mistakes. So that was that's the beginning of our working agreements. Andrea is going to have the next part of our working agreements.
Just maybe one quick note, if I could, Andrea. And in a lot of this language, we had this, or the subcommittee had discussions of making it all present tense. And so I noticed a few places where I think we need to make a couple edits where it talks about things that we will do, or that you as a committee rather will do. But the recommendation from subcommittee was to really ground the language in current action to make it clear that these are practices and ways of working together that you all are being called upon to do now, not just in the future, if that makes sense in terms of framing. So I just wanted to share that because I noticed a few places where you need to go back and probably make a couple more edits still. So yeah, back to you, Andrea.
Thanks, James, and thanks, Michael. And by the way, anytime you want to read me a story, I'm in. You have a beautiful voice. So Michael did a really good job of kind of saying what all of the different sections are. We're talking in depth about a couple of them, but I want to step back and say, we came and presented the bylaws, the draft bylaws to you a few meetings ago, and you said, but like, what about all of the good stuff? And we told you we would come back to you with the good stuff. We also made a list of the stuff you said you wanted, and we heard a commitment to equity, a commitment to community engagement, a commitment to equity and how we kind of run our meetings. Basically, everything you said has a spot in here, even if it hasn't been fully developed. So I just wanted to kind of place us there because I think because James was shuffling slides, we missed him saying that at the front. Equity and governance. So this is the, like, how do we live our values through our meetings? And it's in two parts, and it came from two different places in our group conversations. So the decision-making, values, and process. So this is kind of over the course of a couple of conversations as a group, we talked about what it means to make a decision and what it means to come to agreement about a decision, to work through conflicts, etc. So I did my very best to kind of capture what was actually like an hour and a half of meeting time into this little bit of text. But basically it says, like, we're really working to take in all the information, make the best decisions we can. And we are working to do that in a way that arrives at all of us agreeing. And we understand that that might not happen. And in fact, that there is power in being able to say no, even when the group says yes. And then just like one last sentence, which is the final decision-making process that the group agreed to. So that's what that bit is. And then the next bit down is, so kind of in thinking about how do we enact our values in these conversations, I went back to the notes from our January 11th training session and learning session together. And that kind of visioning document, that like 3-piece like paper thing we did and whatever, our small group conversations, I took the notes from all of that. Thank you to June for making it organized for me, so that was easy. And I crafted some values for us as a start. The like process person in me wants to spend another day together developing this, but out of living our, we will make this up as we go along and we'll fix what's wrong commitment. We're just gonna go for it. I'm not actually gonna read all of this because you can tell I'm a little hoarse today. So I will just say values-based, really grounding in the principles that have been described above. Honest participation, we're sharing, we're listening, we really mean that. and we welcome many ways of knowing, including emotions and stories. Curiosity, we're really taking in all of the information from each other that we have, in addition to the community feedback we've gotten from our engagement, as described by Michael so beautifully. Grace, I heard a lot about this in the notes. So like we're trying to make this new thing, this new way of being together. There will be missteps, and we will make repairs to continue to build trust. We're open to conflict, because conflict is how we don't stifle participation, how we really truly are open to a wide perspective, and how we welcome all of ourselves into this work, and hopefully craft better outcomes. Space and time, this is really a nod to the fact that we're on this like really linear push, and the linear push is part of, I think, how I ended up on the committee. We had a candidate who conflicted out, and we were pushing forward to get a committee. I'm not sorry to get this time with you, but I think one of the things that we agree to is that we need to like step back when we're not sure we've got it all, when we'll make adjustments, even do things over again and take the time necessary. So that, and transparency, like really truly transparency, not because we're required by the state of Oregon to be transparent, but because this is how we do the work. So that is all of that. And then there's just a couple of notes here about how we run meetings, and then a lot of placeholders.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea. I can talk through a couple more of the sections if that's helpful, and then we can open it up for, we actually do have quite a bit of time still, so we can open it up for some Q&A. And just wanted to also just highlight that, you know, the piece on anti-racism and on equity is really what we've spent the last 2 subcommittee meetings working on. So the fact that there's not placeholder language there is not a reflection in importance. It's very much the opposite, that that the subcommittee has been working very diligently on this, and we want to really hone that language a little bit better before presenting it to the full committee. And so just wanted to also reflect that, because I feel like we may have kind of gone over that pretty quickly. And it is critical in our work. So other elements of the working agreement that we see contained in here, and that, as Andrea mentioned, really speaks to the conversation that happened in the bylaws and elements that you all as a committee want to bring in, was one is more articulation of the co-chair model and some of the different potential roles as a whole between for that co-chair role, or the roles, and then an opportunity for the co-chairs when they are selected by the committee to really allocate those, and for this to be a living document that changes in that allocation as new people come into those roles. And so the structure is sort of the first pass at some of those responsibilities for you all to look at, and feel free to provide edits and additions. Then we're also working on some very, very core elements of how you all work with each other and conduct yourselves in meetings and in engagement with community. And so that takes a few different forms. One is the very basic elements of abiding by the state code of ethics, which we've made available and has some requirements. And then also building out this piece really around how you all work together amongst each other, and just recognizing that people come from all different backgrounds and kind of cultural methods of expression, and that we don't want to just default to a white dominant way of thinking about what's appropriate or a good way to participate. And so I think this general statement at the end of the first bullet is the direction that the subcommittee has put forward, but we still need a lot of work in what this means, that we don't intend to regulate committee members' tone or expression at meetings. We want people to show up with their full selves as much as possible. That said, we also do need to ensure people's safety, and that people are not acting in a way that feels physically threatening or violent. So this is an element that the subcommittee is going to continue to work on. Then there's some articulation of some of the roles of BPS staff. Some of you as committee members noted that you wanted a little bit more kind of granularity about what the role of the staff liaison is, and the staff, us as staff as a whole. So that's an element as well. And then a commitment to continual or regular evaluation of us as staff collectively, not so much individual performance evaluations, but more how we're doing as staff in serving your needs as committee members. And so that's an element as well. And then there is some pieces about how the working agreements will be reviewed on a regular basis. And we're still building this out, but this was, again, something that came out of the committee conversation about bylaws and working agreements, and will be content that will be evolving. So, and then the bottom part of this is just signatures and us jointly making this commitment to engage together in this agreement. So I think I'll hand it over to Sam or to open questions. I think we should probably take questions on the working agreement before going into other bylaws elements.
And maybe what I'll just say, James, is I think it's, given the timing, I think I'll just acknowledge the bylaws. A lot of the changes there, and I think given that we just sent the document to you all yesterday, it's a lot of just small edits and responses around a range of, I can just go pretty quick around just scheduling, clarity around quorum if members abstain, teasing out what it means to file a statement of economic interest, addressing leave of absences. So there's just a handful of really clarifying elements that we came in and addressed in the bylaws that you all should review, and the redlined edits. And when we come back to that discussion, I'd love for at least for you all to compile that feedback and bring it to the subcommittee. But I think the focus of the conversation, I'd love the Q&A to turn it to the working agreements. But that's really, to close out that piece, I think the bylaws, wanted to make sure you all saw sort of how we were addressing some of the edits that would, based on feedback we received there when we last presented this.
Great. So yeah, I'm not going to scroll through the bylaws and those edits that Sam mentioned. In fact, I think just because it's prettier to look at, I'm going to scroll up to the guiding principles piece of the document, but I can move around at a pace that hopefully doesn't make you too dizzy looking at the screen as questions come up.
Faith?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to appreciate Michael, Andrea, James, and anyone else who worked on this. I had a chance to briefly review all of this before the meeting tonight, and I am so impressed by the level, the richness, and the density of this document. It is so well thought out, and all of the additions here. I'm going to sit with it for quite some time. I think it's really beautiful, and I just appreciate all of your hard work. So no question, but deep, deep gratitude. Thank you.
Robin?
Yeah, first I'm gonna ditto everything that Faith said. This is great, and I'm not a writer, and I think you guys did a great job articulating all this, so thank you. I do have a couple clarifying questions. First, I presume you want our feedback, so how best to send it in and when and all that good stuff. The second question is, the next two is clarifying. Some of the stuff that is written in this document kind of borderlines on guiding principles, and so I just want to be able to get a sense of where guiding principles fit in with, you know, some of the themes in this document. And then the third is I'm struggling with this last one. I don't know why, but I am. So I'm gonna just put it out there. There's a few sections that talk about commitment. Is that a commitment of the committee as a whole, to us as individuals, to each other? If you can kind of, I don't know why I'm struggling with it, but if you can give some context in terms of who this commitment is from and to whom. Does that make sense? That's it.
Yeah, I feel like maybe some of the subcommittee members should answer the commitment question. But on your question, Robin, about the connection to the guiding principles, I think that's somewhat intentional that the elements of the working agreement reflect and reference the guiding principles, because the guiding principles are effectively a part of the working agreement in a structural way. And also in the sense that the guiding principles could be reviewed and amended as part of the working agreement if needed. I think so there should be alignment there, and if there's not alignment, definitely, that would be an issue.
I guess the question, does one kind of supersede the other, or are they just kind of more complementary?
I mean, my opinion is that the guiding principles are the guiding principles. They supersede. Everything else is to kind of give more information. And I'll give you my take on the commitment thing, which I think kind of, for me, a little bit answers that. And then Michael, please, your thoughts. This is really kind of how we've thought about describing how the committee interacts with each other. And how we do day-to-day work, how we handle subcommittee conversations and committee conversations, and our interactions kind of in the work process itself. So it's the commitment that you make to the committee. And the guiding principles are the commitment that the committee made to the community about the work.
Michael, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so in the commitment to community engagement, it also, as Andrea said, it is a commitment from us to ourselves on how we are going to engage with the community, right? But this is how we sort of make a commitment to ourselves on how we are going to engage the community. And so even when it's a commitment to community engagement, really it's a commitment amongst ourselves to engage with the community in specific ways or in certain ways.
And I wanted to just note that we are at 6:53, and just so James or Sam, maybe if you could quickly, if there's a relatively quick answer to Robin's question about how to provide feedback, we could offer that and then break for 5 minutes.
Yeah, Robin, thank you. I would say if you email staff, what we'll do is when we convene the subcommittee again, we'll bring that feedback back. So as far as, because there's clearly more work to be done on both of these. So I would just appreciate if committee members, as you all review both this working agreements as well as the amendments to the bylaws, send that feedback directly to James and or myself, and we will share that with the subcommittee.
Great.
And by date, we don't have it. So ideally, I would just say sometime by the end of next week, since we haven't scheduled. So I don't. Yeah, by the end of next week. We'll check in with you all, with Michael and Angie about that.
Okay. Well, we are going to break for 5 minutes, and then when we come back, we're going to have presenters and then a Q&A for the rest of the meeting. So if everybody can kind of be back in their seats and plugged into their computers at 7 o'clock, that would be great.
And everybody, I'm going to stop sharing, and Katie, you can take over the PowerPoint again.
Okay.
Thank you all.
And I'm gonna ask our presenters to unmute themselves, and if they want to, they can also turn their videos on. We have a number of folks here to kind of share information, and we're gonna start off with Chris Grube, who is the owner of Good Energy Retrofit.
Hi all, nice to see you guys. Thanks for welcoming us here today. I'm here with the Home Performance Contractors Guild, and we are a group of mostly volunteer industry members. We focus on promoting excellence in residential energy efficiency. In our group, we bring together contractors, suppliers, funders, different programs, product reps, and we all come together to advocate for and try to promote energy efficiency work. We provide trainings, small business support, peer-to-peer mentorship. I'm here today with a group that of contractors and assessors. Most of us were Clean Energy Works contractors. Combined, we have performed thousands of assessments and retrofits on homes. I'm Chris Grube. I'm the owner and founder of Good Energy Retrofit. It's a home performance contracting firm that specializes in energy efficiency, residential energy efficiency, and I've been running that firm for 12 years. In addition to being one of the original home performance or Clean Energy Works contractors, I've also got background providing retrofit work for county low income weatherization programs, and then and I was a contractor for the Living Coley weatherization program with NEA. Really great program to get to work on. I think it reflects a lot of what you guys are working towards here. Been the past president and vice president of the Guild, longtime board member. I'm going to pass you over to my peers so you can get to know them, and then we'll shift back to the presentation. So now, Robert Hammerly, are you here? Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Good evening, everybody. So here, let me just start this video. Okay. So yeah, good evening. My name is Robert Hammerly. I'm the founder and principal of Green Savers. We are a home performance contractor who have been making Oregon residents more energy efficient for 13 years now. Over that time, we've worked with scores of different federal, state, and municipal-based energy efficiency programs. So looking forward to answering questions and sharing any advice I have over that experience. And also a longtime board member of the Home Performance Guild. It's a great group of industry folk who are focused on growing the industry and making Oregon more energy efficient. So thank you for having me here tonight. And is it
about Brian next?
All right. Hi, I'm Brian Denny. I am the current president of the Home Performance Guild. I'm also the director of Healthy Habitat, which is a nonprofit organization that provides environmental testing inside of our homes for items such as radon, asbestos, lead-based paint, anything that's environmentally unfriendly to us. And also energy assessment is the other end of our business as well. We provide the home energy scores for the Home Energy Score program, and we've done over 3,000 of those for the leading provider for the Department of Portland's Home Energy Score program. And that's it. Again, Brian Denny with healthyhabitat.org. And James, I believe you're up next.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is James Matoir, and thank you for inviting us to speak tonight. I have worked in the energy efficiency home performance industry for the past 11 years, and I have worn many hats in my career. I'm currently the sitting vice president of the Home Performance Guild. I serve as a board member of Community Energy Projects. I'm the small business owner of Advanced Energy Inspections, and I currently work for Earth Advantage, which is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to accelerate the adoption of sustainable buildings here in the Pacific Northwest. One of my passions of working in this industry is helping people make the most informed decision about the health, energy efficiency, safety, comfort, and durability of their home. I learned very early in my career that by making a home more energy efficient, by default, it makes the home healthier, but it also makes the occupants of the home healthier, or the occupants of the home healthier as well. I started out as a weatherization installer in the Clean Energy Works Oregon program, installing energy efficient measures such as insulation and air sealing in existing homes, and quickly worked my way up to running a home performance division for a minority owned home performance contractor working in the Clean Energy Works of Oregon program. I would like to say that I did not get here without any help, as there was a path for me into this industry, as there were scholarships, trainings, and incentives available from the Clean Energy Works of Oregon for home performance contractors to work with someone like myself with minimal experience, but had taken all of the certifications required to do home performance work in the Clean Energy Works Oregon program. The Home Performance Guild is the organization where I tapped into those resources. After 4 years of managing weatherization projects, I decided to switch gears and get into the new construction side of energy efficiency. Through the years, my role has evolved, and I currently work as an instructor that works with organizations whose mission is to teach students from underrepresented, disadvantaged, and communities of color about green building techniques and practices, along with career pathways into the energy efficiency industry. Through my work at Earth Advantage, we partnered with and began discussions with organizations like the Home Performance Guild, Community Energy Project, and Energy Trust of Oregon, and are actively involved in supporting pre-apprenticeship programs in Portland by providing green building, energy efficient career pathway training. From our discussions with the Pre-Apprenticeship Training Consortium, there appears to be an interest and need in exploring how to better understand the opportunities that PCEF funding may provide to the weatherization industry and job creation, and that role that pre-apprenticeship programs can provide to meet PCEF project and employer requirements. We are all very excited and looking forward to furthering the discussion on this topic with the committee, as we are all passionate about creating jobs in our industry. And I will turn it back over to Chris now.
Thanks, James. So as we move forward with our presentation, I'll start by making a few general comments, and then we will we'll talk about what home performance is. Well, James and I will do a presentation for you on that. And then we'll leave. We're hoping that's about a half an hour. And then after that, we will leave hopefully about a half an hour for you guys to ask any questions that you may have. To get started today, there are some takeaways that we would like to leave you with. Some issues that we feel are very important to talk about. The first one is the importance of small businesses. Most residential energy efficiency contractors are medium to small businesses. They have 1 or 2 owners. Very few are unions, but we are also an industry that's very familiar, comfortable, and very fond of high road standards. We understand that strong businesses are built with strong employees, living wages, benefits. Having a diverse, healthy workforce is an important part of our ethos as contractors, but we're not union. And it doesn't mean that we're not interested in thinking about that, but it's important to understand that our structures may be just a little bit different. So as PCEF develops and grows, you're gonna see a whole bunch of folks that are gonna come out of the woodwork, and they're gonna develop small businesses to focus on energy efficiency or solar or whatever they choose to focus on. And this can be a wonderful thing. And I'm a strong believer in the value of small business. Small businesses can be an amazing avenue, an opportunity, or vehicle, I should say, for building future job security, for building opportunity. And if you think of kind of the analogy of home ownership, at what home ownership does in our community, home ownership provides avenues for wealth building. It provides avenues for creation of intergenerational wealth, and again, personal security. So I see small businesses as having very much that same potential in our communities. So from an equity lens, it's that creating successful small businesses and providing sustainable pathways for success can be as equal as job creation for all of our communities. But it's also very important to realize another piece of the puzzle with small businesses. Small business owners carry tremendous personal financial risk. If you think about how people fund their businesses, they will use their own personal savings. They may take a line of credit from their home to buy equipment. They may even pull money out of their retirement funds, or they end up not putting money away into retirement at all. So this is a very special, small businesses are very special. We have to care for them. So one of the first things we want to leave you with is, as you are developing your program and as you are evaluating proposals, we urge you to prioritize those proposals that demonstrate a real recognition of the risk that small businesses take, that show concern for protecting the well-being of those businesses, concern and put in structures for that as well, and that also demonstrate that they truly value collaboration with those entities. The next takeaway that we want to leave you with is jobs training to jobs to retention. That's a continuum that needs to be a continuum. So for every grad of a jobs training program, they need to have a job. That's what we're going for. For them to have a job, employers need to be hiring. For employers to be hiring, there need to be adequate and consistent project funding. So employers will be nervous to hire for a program that maybe only has 1 year. Maybe it's not real clear what the pathway is going to look like down the road. So employers will be looking for some security that there will be the business to back up the increased expenses of the hires. So when you're looking at projects 3-5 years, could be very important. Another piece is that as those folks come out of the jobs training programs and they come and they join our teams, each new employee will need to participate in many hours of on-the-job training. And that's another piece of the puzzle. It'll be a expense in time, resources for that company. And so there will need to be, that will need to be factored into things. Additionally, in terms of jobs, there are a variety of positions that our businesses need to scale up and be successful. And we can talk a lot about construction and the trades, labor force. Those pieces we talk about a lot. We know that those are going to be important to us. But we're also going to be needing folks that have some really specialized training as auditors, assessors, the folks who can go into the house and do the evaluations. We're going to need folks that are skilled at project management, that are skilled at administration. So as you're looking at workforce programs, take all of this into account. A piece that we were asked to think a little bit about what some of our challenges are in terms of hiring a diverse workforce. And I'll just throw this in a little, that we can talk further about that. In our industry, we actually have a very diverse workforce. It's just simply that it's not diverse throughout. That the construction side is quite diverse, but when it comes to the skilled trades, auditors, subcontractors, project managers, sales. Those are some of the positions that we're really needing to grow the workforce diversity in those areas. So the second point we wanted to leave you with today is that as you evaluate your proposals, we urge you to prioritize those that account for this entire process. Training, to job placement, to retention. It's a continuum that has to go together. And if the plans don't include that full continuum, it's not going to work. So just be aware of the importance of that. And I think you are. We're all working towards partnerships. Workforce training needs to be for a wide set of skills, and there needs to be funding that will go to on-the-job training back towards the business side of things. The final point that I want to talk about leaving you guys with is when doing residential energy efficiency work, there's the potential for a lot of unintended negative consequences that can come from doing that work. It's important to really know what you're doing, to not have the right experience, to not have the right training, the right knowledge. You can leave a home with some pretty big problems. You can leave a home with poor indoor air quality. You can leave a home with mold and moisture problems. You can trap things like, or you can suck carbon monoxide into a house. You can trap radon in a house. So there's some really serious consequences to this work. Doing it right matters. So the third point is, as you're evaluating your proposals, making your plans, we urge you to prioritize those that specifically specify a solid building science guided approach to the work, such as we all like the home performance with Energy Star approach. That's the training and background most of us have. But we can talk more about that. But these pieces are very important to the success of this process for all of us. So that leaves me at a great place to pass this over to James, who's gonna pick up our PowerPoint presentation and talk a little bit more about what home performance is.
Thanks, Chris, appreciate it. So I'll go over our agenda a little bit. In our presentation today, we'll discuss what is home performance. We'll talk about an energy audit and how an energy audit is an important part of the home performance process. A little later, Chris will go over some real world examples of how the interacting relationships of building science can affect a home and its occupants. I'd like to say that Chris, Robert, Brian, and I have given the committee an overview of who we are and who we represent at the Home Performance Guild, along with some of the takeaways we want you to leave this meeting with. We all hope to answer questions with regard to how the Home Performance Guild can be a partner and a resource when it comes to home performance during the Q&A at the end of this presentation. Katie, next slide, please. So what is building science? A simple definition of building science is the study of how energy, moisture, and air move throughout a building structure. Building science studies the interactions of people, components, and systems, and the physical phenomena affecting a building. When studying building science, we often talk about the house as a system. This is a comprehensive way to look at the forces acting upon that structure. House as a system starts with the structure from the base of the foundation going up the four walls to the peak of the roof. Next, we have the physical world, which is constantly applying forces upon the structure, and this is all greatly influenced by the mechanical systems installed. You know, we're also looking at that, so you're looking at from the foundation to the walls to the peak of the roof, and so kind of like that six-sided box, all four walls, top and bottom, and you're looking at how those assemblies are coming together. Finally, the last piece is the people living in the home. You know, they exert forces upon the structure just by running through their daily life activities, whether they're cooking and releasing more moisture in the air. They are taking showers and releasing moisture in the air. They're using their combustion appliances or their fireplace to potentially release hazardous gases in the home. These are all things we really need to be looking at as a building scientist and an energy auditor. Next slide, please. So if we are looking through the lens of building science, the list of systems shown here in this slide represent the structure itself or the mechanicals in the home. A holistic view would be looking at how all of these systems interact with each other, along with the climate conditions of where the home is located and the occupants who live in the home. So if we think of a six-sided box with all four walls and a top and bottom, we're thinking about this concept of we're paying to heat and cool the air inside the box. We don't want that air we just paid to heat and cool go outside the box. So we're paying to condition the air inside the box. We want to keep it inside. We don't want it going to an unconditioned area. So that's where kind of this professional air sealing and being able to test a home comes in on the home performance side. So take the flip side of that. We're making a home tighter. We're humans. We need to breathe fresh air. We spend 90% of our time indoors, so indoor air quality is important. We want to make sure we're not creating problems for occupants of the home by making it too tight and causing moisture and hazardous gases being trapped into the home. So how do you begin to make an assessment of all these systems? Next slide, please. So it's going to be doing an energy audit. So you'll hear we say energy auditor, energy assessor during this conversation, and they can be interchanged, but an energy auditor is someone who asks the questions and listens to the homeowner and make notes on the issues of comfort, safety, and high energy bills. We then combine that information with what the home is telling us to then create a home performance solution for the client. A good energy auditor will be able to speak on the best practices and return on investment when it comes to a solution to energy efficiency being installed in a home. Next slide, please.
So do not play the video. Or do you
No, don't play the video.
Okay.
No, thank you. So this slide is showing some of the data entry points an energy auditor will be collecting on site during an energy audit. For example, item number 6, conditioned floor area. An energy auditor will need to measure each floor of the home that is being heated or cooled, but also will be able to identify problem areas where air infiltration can get into a home. Once again, that concept of conditioned and unconditioned areas. Homes in need of home performance work typically have attics and crawl spaces with dust, pests, and mold in them, which can affect the health of the occupants. One of the other data points off of this list is we're looking at insulation. We're looking at the different levels of insulation that are installed. Is it installed properly? If it's different types of insulation, how do you know you have the correct level that it needs to be insulated to? Do you need to add, or is there enough? We're looking at all those different aspects when it comes to looking at insulation in the home as well. Next slide, please. So this is more data points collected at the time of the energy assessment. This list is not exhaustive, as there are many other assessments and testing that can be done at the time of an audit. For example, testing for the presence of toxic substances such as radon, asbestos, and mold can be completed at that time. But let's look at duct sealing, for example, or the ducting, the HVAC ducting in a home. Ducts run predominantly or in a lot of older homes, they run in our attics and crawl spaces. And if not sealed properly, they can be a major pathway where dust and pests can get into the home, affecting the health of the occupants. The places where ducting transitions from conditioned to unconditioned space are typically places where energy is lost from a home. If homeowners are paying, if homeowners are paying to heat and cool the air in that home, let's keep that conditioned air in the home by sealing the ducts and the home. It could be a real issue if warm, moist air is being exhausted from the kitchen who's cooking, with the occupant cooking, and it goes into a cold winter attic. That can cause some serious moisture and mold issues within the home. Next slide, please. And so, Katie, if you click on that blower door, that video should pop up. And then at some point when that one's done, you can click on the thermal imaging one. But if we take this concept of blower or the 6-sided box and we do a blower door test, what we're doing is we're creating, we're closing all the exterior doors and all the exterior windows on the home. And then we are pulling air into the home and then out that fan. In essence, what this does is it gives us a great place to look to see where air is coming into the home at those areas of conditioned and unconditioned areas where it hasn't been sealed. So this is a really great way with this diagnostic equipment to then start working on a scope of work for professionally air sealing that home. Another one of the tools we use is a Duct Blaster. And so think of the concept of the 6-sided box again, but we're just specifically testing how leaky the HVAC ducts are. And so we're covering them up and then we're seeing how leaky those duct systems are. So let's take, for example, you have a furnace, it's in your garage, but the back bedroom is all the way on the other side of the house. If that ducting is leaking all the way to that back bedroom, 40, 50, 60 plus feet away, whoever sleeps in that room is going to have some comfort issues. Potentially, if there's pests up in the attic as well, they have a nice warm place to then cozy up to and live, rent-free up in your attic. So it's a nice way to be able to see how leaky the duct system is, and then making sure that air you're paying to heat or cool is going where you want it to your room so you can sleep nice at night. One of the other last pieces of equipment we use, and this is by no means an exhaustive list of equipment as well, is a thermal imaging camera. And a thermal imaging camera is going to be able to look at temperature differences. And so it's really good at being able to see where insulation has been installed or has not been installed in attics, walls, and roofs. And especially, it's important to be able to use that, especially in like walls where you can't really see what's behind, the drywall, or looking up in a vaulted ceiling. Was there even insulation in there? By using a thermal imaging camera, you'll be able to see that. And then lastly, combining that thermal imaging camera and blower door test, when you are pulling air into the home, it's going to be a different temperature outside, and you're pulling that cold air in. It's really going to show up on your thermal imaging camera, once again, giving you a really good idea of creating a scope of work for professionally air sealing a home. Next slide, please.
Right. James, I just wanted to note a quick time check. It is 7:28. So, I mean, this is a great presentation. Really appreciate it. But just wanted to make sure that you know what time it was.
Okay, thank you. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The city of Portland has developed infrastructure to help deliver energy assessments in a consistent and efficient manner. Speaking of the home energy score, in 2017, it was mandated that every home sold in the city of Portland receive a home energy score at the time of sale. It's currently being used as a tool for future homeowners to assess the true cost of energy bills when considering purchasing a home. The home energy score could be a great tool for PCEF to track and analyze improvements, therefore quantifying savings from home performance projects. An assessor would complete a home energy score prior to home performance work, and once that work is completed, they come back to then do a second home energy score to update and document the work that was completed. The benefits to contractors in PCEF would be having trained assessors complete quality assurance inspections to document the savings, but to also ensure the project was completed to program standards. The benefits to homeowners is helping them see the true cost of energy bills, great info on where to start when deciding to make the home more energy efficient. And if they decide to sell their home, it documents the energy efficiency improvements to the home so they can then increase the resale value of their home. Next slide, this will be my last slide. So Having an energy audit completed on a home is the first part of taking a look to see where the home is currently, and then making recommendations based on all the information gathered from the audit. So in closing, assessors bring this attitude of like a doctor. We look to diagnose the issues in a home and then work closely with the homeowner to help them understand why they should move forward with the work prescribed from the perspective of helping them making an informed decision on the health and energy efficiency of their home. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris to talk about some of these real world examples that are crucial to understanding home performance.
Thanks, James. That was great. This will just be about 5 more minutes. And I have to say, this is the fun part. This is the part where we do some really good work, and we get to make people's lives better. And so all of you working on the committee right now, just you get to sort of imagine how the rubber's going to hit the road and the things we're going to be able to do that are going to improve people's lives. One of the first slides here looks at one of the major piece of work that we do with folks, which is replacing heating systems. And this has one of my favorite products in the world, the ductless heat pump. And the ductless heat pump is an incredibly powerful tool that we get to use to reduce the cost of heating in people's homes. And I think through the program, I'm hoping we're going to be installing a lot of them. And if you think about a house that is heated with electric baseboard heaters or little cadet wall heaters, that home could be, those folks could be spending $300 to $400 a month to heat their house in at the worst months of winter. We add a ductless heat pump, and the cost will go down to 1/3 of that, and they're not that expensive. So exciting what we get to do. Go to the next slide, please. Another piece of the work that we do is that we make people's homes, through weatherization, we make people's homes much, much more comfortable, and we improve their indoor air quality. When you insulate, it's a pretty complex process to insulate, actually. You're combining adding insulation and managing airflows. So you're air sealing the cold outside air out, but then you're also ventilating inside the house properly to make sure that the air is still moving and it's still being cleaned. The impact to this work can really make a difference in terms of people's experience in their daily life and in their homes. And I want to talk a little bit about crawl space, which is my favorite part of the house to work on because it's the worst part of the house. If you think about what's in a crawl space, they're filled with pests and moisture, mold spores, radon, perhaps, really funky air. That air actually makes its way into the house through stack effect, and can have a pretty negative impact on the comfort level in the house. So air sealing, sealing the ducts, insulating makes a big difference. Next slide. Next slide are water heaters. We replace a lot of water heating. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it, but you can save a lot of money by doing so. And go ahead and go to the next slide. This is something it's not energy efficiency. This is seismic retrofits, and we do a lot of them. But there's something that's really interesting, and there's a divide in our community when it comes to who gets to have a weatherized, efficient house. There's also a big economic divide in our community about who gets to live in a safe house and who gets to protect their investment. Just wanted to throw this in there as something to be thinking about. It's what we are doing as home performance contractors as part of the work that we do. And it's a pretty good fit with PCEF and could make a big difference in folks' lives. So that's just kind of where the rubber hits the road. I think I'm being asked to wrap it up. Is that true, Katie? Where are we?
Nope. You were at 7:35, so depending on how much kind of conversation you might be looking for, I think that
Okay.
relatively soon, but you've got a couple more minutes.
All right, it's just a little bit left. So it's exciting. We can do some good work. We can make some differences in people's lives. That all this work is leading up to that. But let's not forget, there can be big problems that come from it as well. So I'm just going to point to a couple of them, and then we'll move on. So go to the next slide real quick. Go to the next slide after that. So one of the problems that can happen, you can air seal a house too tight, not have, let's say you air seal a house really tight, which is great. We love to air seal houses tight. But let's say you've got it too tight and you've got a really powerful fan. You can actually backdraft a natural drafting hot water heater, bring carbon monoxide into the house. Next slide. You can do it wrong by just replacing only the windows in the house. The window industry has done a beautiful job of making people think that that's the way you're going to improve your energy efficiency. You got to replace all your windows. Well, that's a very expensive way to go. And windows are important, but they're not the end all be all. So you could be missing some other really valuable work that could be done on a house by focusing on the wrong thing. And then let's go to the last one. When insulating is a pretty complex process. You need to know about a lot of different components of the house to insulate it properly. You need to be able to assess for knob and tube wiring and mitigate knob and tube wiring. Otherwise, you can create fire risk in a house. You need to be able to address asbestos. You need to be able to address radon. As part of insulating, you also need to be able to calculate ventilation and make sure you've got enough attic ventilation, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna rush this a little bit because I don't want to go too long on these issues. But sum it up. There's a lot of good work to do, and we as a group over the years. We've learned a lot. We've seen a lot of ups and downs in the energy efficiency industry. We've seen a lot of successes and failures. And there's a lot that we would like to share with you. We'd like to be able to take some of those lessons learned and help make this process moving forward easier. We won't be able to get to all of it today. And we hope for more conversation. But for now, I'm going to stop and turn it over to you guys to ask us any questions. And the four of us are here to answer. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Ranfis?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone, for that presentation. I think it was really valuable. And thank you for asking the question around just bringing it front and center for us around like who benefits, especially as we consider the safety of a home and the quality of a home, and who benefits from weatherization. I'm really, I think, interested to hear your thoughts on how we can help some of these small businesses. And I'm just curious your definition of small businesses, but like how do we make sure that they're financially stable to be able to work on this? I want to acknowledge that, in construction has a higher rate than most other sectors around high business failure rate, if you will. I also want to acknowledge that this is an industry with in this sector, a high rate of wage and hour violations. So how do we ensure that we're promoting a system that's rewarding those high road contractors, those contractors that are doing that quality installation, that are doing the right thing around paying their workers, and having a system, whether it's PCEF, that's making sure that they're being able to work on these projects and being able to be financially solvent. So I'm really curious on some of your and your team's perspective on this and how we can promote that system within PCEF. And I think the point around the building science really hits the nail for me around the importance of verifying the quality of the installation. I know it's just one piece of the energy audit, but it did seem to hit home for me, just the importance of that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Chris or James, did you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to be quiet for a sec here and ask. Robert, are you still on the phone? Would you like to?
Sure. Yeah, so I think a couple things in regards to guarding or protecting small businesses in the construction industry from going out of business, because you're right, there's a high percentage that go out of business. One of the biggest things there would be consistency, and whether the business has it's a sole proprietor, or they have 10 people working there or 20 people working there. The idea with these programs that it's a slow, consistent ramp is key, because in a lot of programs you get hit with a lot of work out of the gate. You're hiring, you're trying to catch up, and then 6 months later, 9 months later, the work starts to dry up and you have way more overhead than you did prior to the program. And now you're behind the curve trying to decide how to hold on to these good people but yet not lose your shirt. So I think consistency with the workload is really important. And that was kind of Chris's point before. The other is building a program process that allows businesses to do work inside and outside of the program. One of the downfalls of Clean Energy Works was, I think inadvertently, they built a lot of process that steered contractors into solely depending on their program for work. And then anytime there was a hiccup in funds or their ability to generate work leads or anything like that, that the contractors didn't have another source of income. And so they had a hard time operating in a system where all their eggs were in one basket. In regards to payroll and making sure that there's not wage theft going on, I think there are some established ways to do that. I do think a high roads agreement is an important part of that. And then there can be some kind of payroll reporting or something that would, all of the contractors that are above board are paying their people in a way that they have to report it to the IRS. So you can report that to another entity without too much trouble.
Thank you, and yeah,
Thank you.
I think there's another piece there that that one of the ways that you protect small businesses, just as a way you protect anybody who's vulnerable, I think it has to do with listening, having an open dialogue, listening to what people are telling you that they need, and having kind of mechanisms and systems for having that be a part of your process. If I was evaluating a grant proposal, I would want to know how are they going to flex and adjust their own assumptions to be able to listen to what the needs are that are out there. So I know it's kind of a simple thing, but I think it's kind of a critical thing, and it's not something that always happens.
Thanks, Chris. Michael has a comment, and I was gonna stop sharing my screen, but just so that you all can see each other a little bit better. But we can certainly go back to the presentation.
Do you want to get rid of the presentation? Yeah.
It is now gone. Michael?
Yeah, I had thanks for coming out and giving us all this information. I did have a question. So for on-the-job training, Are those costs that you just build into your bid for on the job training of apprentices, or I don't know what learning workers are called in the apprentices? Is that's built into your job costs?
Yeah, it ends up getting built into the job cost. There has to be some room that you can build it into. There were some pretty powerful mechanisms in place with Clean Energy Works. Work Systems did some nice, they would give us a certain amount of money. If we hired somebody and we retained that person over 6 months, a year, whatever, for each month that we retained, we were actually given some money back for hiring them. And it helped offset the cost.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I was actually part of that program coming in with Work Systems, and the way it worked for the home performance contractor I worked for, like I said, they hired me. I had the certifications, but they hired me knowing that I was pretty green into the industry, and they were required to pay the high road or the prevailing wage. But they helped offset half of my wages because they knew they were taking a chance on me and I was going to have to learn a lot of things. But like Chris has said as well, the longer that person has stayed on, it actually helped out, through that whole process. And during that, there was kind of a, if you will, kind of a breakdown of the hours of what I needed to do to kind of work through this step to say, hey, like I am, confident and ready to go out and do energy audits on my own versus, shadowing someone and still learning, doing the project management now of scheduling and, working with crews, making sure they have their materials, and then also helping to make sure on the back end of all of that, that the paperwork and administration is being filed in order to get the incentives from the Clean Energy Works program. So I'm proof that a system like that works. And so I would like to see something like that come back online because I think it would work really well.
Thanks, James. And Brian, I do see that you turned your camera on and assume you have something to add, but I did want to just note the time at 7:47. Megan, you had your hand up, but then you put it down. Is your question, do you still have a question?
I was going to see, I saw Jeffrey also, and Jeffrey being an expert in these areas was going to let Jeff, or not let, but just pass. And if we still have time, I can ask mine.
Okay. And, but I wanted to just also make sure, Brian, did you have something that you wanted to add? Is that why your camera came on?
Was the question earlier, is the apprentice part of our quotes that we're providing in these on the work that we're doing? Was that the question earlier? I want to make sure I clarify it because I know it was answered.
Yeah. I guess I was wondering about that because I think Chris had talked earlier about offsetting the costs of on the job training. And I was wondering how that would, I was trying to wrap my head around how that would work for PCEF because we give grants to nonprofits that then use contractors that bid on the work. So I'm not sure, since we're not directly contracting with contractors, I'm not sure how that would work.
Your funds are going through the nonprofit, not through the contractor, and the contractor has received the funds through the nonprofit. Is that what your statement is? Okay. I mean, yeah, if there was part of those grants were a flow through that would take place, so a certain dollar amount was allocated to a new hire, and perhaps the grant would provide a portion or percentage of the wages for that new hire, that would ease the burden from the business itself, the contractor, in order to hire and train additional help. There's always a risk when you're hiring on, as you know, because you want to retain those people. You don't want them to be here during the busy season and then gone in the wintertime. And speaking of that, it's a whole another idea is if we're moving with a lot of contractors who do have that, that ebb and flow of seasonal work, I don't know if there's any possibility of maybe providing more of those grants into the slower season for the contractor so they don't see the peaks and the valleys and the highs and the lows. Like Robert has mentioned earlier about some of these contractors put all their eggs in one basket, ended up working almost exclusively for clean energy works. But then when things dried out, there wasn't another project, people are going to unemployment, and that doesn't help anything. It doesn't help anybody. So, Oregon's a seasonal a place for contractors. So if there was any possibility to maybe increase those fund availabilities and those project availabilities over the slow season, the winter time, that would definitely help a lot of those valleys. And when you're talking about the risk of a contractor being in business, going out of business, the concern of will they be there tomorrow? Is this someone we should trust and try to work with? The likelihood of that happening could be reduced incredibly if they're on more of a level platform of work rather than just a bunch of business popping in during their busy season anyways. And your quality load would be so much higher.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank
Jeffrey?
Thanks for the presentation, everyone. Very informative. I have a quick question about cash flows for small businesses. I've dealt with a lot of small businesses, and that seems to be one of the major things that they always talk about is cash flows and making sure they're getting the money in a timely fashion to be able to take care of payroll, and so that they're not, left holding the bag or having to go through different avenues to offset their current costs. So I just wanted to get you guys' perspective on that. That seems to be a big issue in the small contracting community.
Jeffrey, you're right. That is a big issue. It was a big issue in the beginning of Clean Energy Works as well. And one of the ways they got around it was they required the financial institution Craft 3 that did a large majority of the project financing to be able to fund 50% of the projects before the start of the project. So basically on signing of a contract, you could get a 50% deposit, and then the contractor could use that money to buy materials, maybe even pay some of the payroll, and then get the remainder after the project was complete.
Ranfis?
Yeah, I hope this is, I think you just want to recognize like we're learning as a committee, and I hope this is the start of a longer term conversation as we try to make course corrections here. I think there's, really want to dig in on some of the consideration around how we can make this really work. Chris, you had made a statement earlier about how there is diversity within construction, but when you look into the skilled trades or different positions, that's where you start to see the lack of diversity. That feels like a real topic on its own. Like as we craft this program, how we're ensuring that there's good diversity within each classified trade and each different position. And so I'm really curious moving forward, just tracking that progress and how we course correct as a PCEF grant making committee. So I just wanted to note that we're learning, and I hope we can continue learning together.
So we are almost at 8 o'clock. I did just want to ask if Megan, if you still had your question. I do note that none of our female committee members have participated in the conversation yet, so would like to make sure that happens if you still have your question or comment.
Well, it was very similar to what Ranfis just asked. I was curious about that problem, which I heard talked about, of not having equity in what I presume are the higher paid and more white collar jobs. And I just wanted to talk about that. So Ranfis already hit on it. But if you have responses to it and thoughts about how a grant program could incentivize efforts to change that, that's what would probably be helpful for us to hear.
Yeah, the how gets complicated. I think there's money, and money can make a difference. But intention is another piece of it, and articulating that's the goal. And I think that we can guide can guide the training programs a little bit and let them know what you are looking for. I think if we end up with a whole bunch of folks coming out of pre-apprenticeship programs, whoa, we're going to have some trouble on our hands, because we're going to have a bunch of folks that are going to be trained up, and there's not going to be the rest of the infrastructure that's needed to help them out. So, so I think intentionally kind of having a sense of what it is that you need, or what is needed in the industry, and articulating that out there to the folks that are putting together the grant proposals. Robert, I see you.
Yeah, so there's one area I think that is ripe and could easily be improved, and this is the HVAC trade. It is not a white collar job necessarily, but it is a skilled trade, and trained technicians can make up to 6 figures a year. So they're good jobs, and they are not, that trade is not very diverse right now. And the other major problem with that trade in Oregon is there are not good training programs for the HVAC trade. So when you're starting from scratch, it seems like it would be pretty easy to engineer it in a way that has outcomes that you desire. So I think that, you know, the electrical and the plumbing trades, that's a little bit different because they have mechanisms that are already up and running. But that HVAC specifically is ripe for change.
Thanks for that, Robert. And thank you to all of the committee members. Jeffrey, I saw that your hand just shot up. It is 7:56. I think we're fine with going a few minutes over, but I do just want to kind of acknowledge that we have the rest of the committee members here. So, nope. So Jeffrey, if you want to
okay.
ask your...
It's okay. We can address another time.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all again. And now I'm just going to ask if committee members have any closing comments. And Sam, do you have any closing comments? You're muted.
Looking forward to just our listening session next week. So we'll send communication out about that and forward that to any others, but we'll certainly send communication out about that tomorrow before noon. So thank you. Oh, Shanice, looks like we got something here.
I'll be brief. I just want to, I guess, reiterate things I'm resonating with that I heard, and appreciate the work that has been done with the bylaws and took some time before to review in addition to this presentation. I think it's helpful for us to sit through those kinds of things as we make sense of, you know, make meaning of what this can really do. And I look forward, exactly, Sam, to this listening session next week, and, you know, truly, yeah, making sense of this together.
Thanks, Shanice. Yeah. All right, well, with that, we will close the meeting. And again, thank you to the committee members, thank you to our presenters, and thanks to members of the public who are listening. See you next week.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
All right, thanks everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting for everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take care.
James.